face! Your face!
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first off-season kind of thing. We haven't done anything since the finale. I'm Josh Consalvo. I'll be your host for this evening. And tonight we're going to be doing a deep dive interview with Dan Alt, talking about his game and everything that has gone down in it. I'm glad for those of you that are hanging out with us tonight. I am joined with my co-host, Mitchell Stokes. How are you tonight,
everybody.
Mitchell?
I'm good, Josh. I feel like even though I've texted you probably every day since the finale, I feel like I've missed you and I haven't got a chance to talk to you.
Both of those things are very true. Our communication has not halted. I wouldn't say it's like we talk any more or less.
No.
Definitely a little less than in season, but yeah. So it's nice to be here on a stream to talk about Big Brother. The world is crazy around us.
I know.
And it's it's been a crazy week on planet Earth. So it's nice to come talk about something that really doesn't matter at all. So it'll be a lot of fun. Relatively speaking, it matters, but we're not the stars of the show tonight. We're going to bring on our good friend, the robbed god of Big Brother Hometowns Season 11, our third place, the Abby Baxley of Big Brother Hometowns 11, I don't know. That's the best.
He's really trying to do something here, Josh. You're making us beer.
I don't
felt like I was in college again. I was like holding it there. Oh, good evening. What's up?
How are you tonight, Dan?
I'm great. It is Sunday after a lovely weekend. Ready to talk about something that doesn't matter.
No, it does matter. It does matter. Of course it matters. But in the grand scheme of what has been going on in our world in the last week, it's I'm glad to come here and do this.
This is for fun. This is for fun. It'll be enjoyable. I'm looking forward to kind of zoning out from the woes of the world and talk to Dan about his really, really fun game that he played in season 11. So
I do want to before, since we're talking about the world at large, there has been one very significant change of power in this world that's happened in the last week, and that would be, of course, that the New York Mets are now owned by Steve Cohen. That's the biggest, most significant change of power that's happened this week. The Mets now have a new owner. 20 years of ineptitude are now coming to its close, and it's a new chapter. The richest owner in baseball, maybe sports, and nothing else.
You're so ridiculous. I saw where that was coming from a mile away.
So anyway, that's that. Let's get into the Big Brother hometowns of it all. All right, here's where I kind of want to start, and I thought about this. I've done very little thinking about this because I've been on vacation this weekend, but I do know where I want to start is, and we probably touched on this in your interview in some capacity. I don't remember. I think Abby did your interview, but what possessed you to do this? What was your journey to here, and what kind of expectations going in, I guess?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I have never played in a long-term ORG. I've played in a little game that a few people have played in called Sequester. Typically takes place on a Friday or Saturday, lasts 5 hours, maybe 6 if you're doing pretty well for yourself. And I played a few different games. I played in like 3 different of the kind of main ones. I was in an all-star game and had done really well and had a lot of fun playing those games, but wanted to kind of test some other skills. I mean, I had done the one night stuff, and while I never won, it was a fun time. But when I kind of saw the tweet come around, I think Joshy posted it. I was like, oh, let me, I can hit a button, see what happens. I had toyed around with other kind of Skype-based games of Big Brother, and no one had really been able to share like a true time commitment. But luckily, I did speak with Abby, and I think in our like lives, we kind of have a similar setup. She has a kid, I have a kid, so it was like, oh, like what does it actually like to play? And she gave me, I think, the realest explanation I could get, and it was the most helpful for me in order to like, I don't know, I'd like to be selective about what I do. I just don't have the time or capacity to play a million games, and I also am the kind of person that once I get involved in a game, I kind of dive in as hard as I can. So that was what kind of possessed me. I'm not a Big Brother fan. I don't watch Big Brother. I watch Survivor.
That might be the first time you've said that.
What?
Like the first time you've said that to people that played with you may be hearing that for the first time.
Yeah, I had seen some maybe seasons when I was growing up, but not in an analytical way. So I wouldn't even say like I truly watched that, and I kind of touched in and out, but I wouldn't say I knew real strategy. But of course, when I was prepping for this, I started listening to Taryn and like how to build an alliance and how to float and do different things. And I was like, I could do that. And so just try to take theory and put it into practice.
Well, that's interesting. My next question was going to be, what was your like preparation then? I didn't know that you did. I mean, I knew you watched some of Big Brother Hometowns, but what preparation do you feel like you did?
Yeah, so I definitely tried to just like look up popular Big Brother clips, because I was like, people are going to talk about Big Brother, and I can't be the person that doesn't know anybody want cake. Like I can't be that guy that doesn't know the thing. So I was like, I got to like try and learn what the things are that people are going to reference. I'm an RHAP subscriber and patron, so definitely familiar in that setting, but started listening to more Taryn, started listening to like daily updates, even though I wasn't watching the show, just to like understand how just people were doing it at the highest level. I watched a lot of Big Brother.
You can claim the highest level, but
sure. The highest showcased, if you will. So I just tried to like do that, and then I mean I'd watched I think season 9 and 10 beforehand. Definitely not of BBH.
Yeah.
Definitely 9, I think, a few times. And then as I was watching, like as I think the first week I was just binging other seasons because I realized things were, for lack of a better word, repetitive, just like reappeared. And so I was like, oh, the more I can understand what happened in the past, the more I can hopefully apply it to the future.
And so on a big picture standpoint, did you find any of that helpful?
Yeah. I think between learning Big Brother comps. I think we'll talk about in the jury phase, like how to like game stay or fold was pretty key. Definitely learning Big Brother hometowns, understanding just like the general format, like, hey, here's what's going to happen on a double. Here's when a double might come again. I learned in like I think Anthony's exit interview, he had also done a lot of this kind of work. So he I think anticipated that a double was coming, but I think I was one of the few that knew it was definitely going to happen and was planning for it. Mm-hmm. So just like being able to understand the paces of the game and when it was going to happen when, and try and figure out when it was important to kind of shoot my shot was pretty key.
Yeah.
From a game perspective, I am so interested to hear you talk about how you prepped for the social aspect of this game, which you don't have to deal with really in Sequester, and what was your like plan coming into that?
Yeah, so I think like I mentioned, I'm the kind of person that like invests fully in the things that I'm doing. So I mean, I was coming into this game hoping that I was going to know few people. I was maybe on a hand, I would be able to count the people I knew tangentially, and it ended up being on the hand of people I did not know. And the con of knowing people is that they know me. And like I said, I played in some pretty high profile Sequester games. I'd gotten very far. I've gotten to 4th place twice. So people knew of my game, and that was going to be dangerous for me. So when I got into the bus, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, I realized I couldn't play a super game bot game, which I kind of known to play. I knew I needed to just invest socially in people. So it was just like finding ways to connect with people. And I definitely tried to do a lot of little things. I think the dad thing was a big part. Like the photo I used was a big part. Just try and not throw people off, but just be like, oh, he's a cool guy, cool dad.
Cool dad.
I didn't know that I wasn't exactly sure that the videos weren't going to be seen by everybody. So I was like, I got to make something that like isn't going to give away too much of my game, but also it's like, oh, he's a gamer, but also likes to drink beer and hang out.
So. I will say, I don't know if I've said this yet, but I loved your video. Oh, it was so funny and just so clever, because it was like 20 seconds and it was perfect. I don't know how much effort you put into that, but it was very fun.
Yeah, it was fun. My wife was like, "What I'm doing? What?" Because she doesn't really get involved in any of this. She kind of keeps blinders on.
Right, so I'm gonna quickly ask. I always ask about like what was her like thoughts of you going into this, and then maybe even throughout it, and then being done with it.
I think that was the biggest lie I told in this game. Someone asked me that, I would have said like the biggest lie was telling my wife that this was going to be a short-term little thing. She was probably actively rooting that I got voted out very early on, because I'll keep repeating it, I just get really invested. So it was like jumping on calls, just like responding to people, wanting to make sure that I was like staying up, because hey, there was I think 2 people on the West Coast, and I needed to make sure that I got quality time with them, which required staying up to their standard operating hours. So like there was like some challenges there, and I will say like I think I did a nice job of like setting some guardrails for myself. I was like, hey, every day from 4 to 6:30, like you guys I'm not going to be accessible because I'm hanging out with my daughter, and like people respected that. And like luckily I think we had an older cast. I mean, there was a few dads, so like that was a great like a piece of luck for me. So Megan, my wife, she underestimated what it was like, and she was like, "We're not doing this again, like anytime too soon. Like you're not going to see me on the org circuit anytime." But it was she was.
I want to hear anytime supportive. Too soon. I don't want to hear anytime ever.
She was very supportive, I will say, as always. But
cool. Well, let's Mitchell. Do you have any other like big questions before we kind of dive into? The play-by-play, so to speak. All right, so you touched on it a second ago. You open up and you're in your bus. I remember Lee was on your bus and Ashley, I guess.
Lee, Ashley, Will, and
what a group.
And Macy.
Blake and Macy and Dan.
Those are some characters.
Yeah, and I joked about this, and I probably mentioned it a few times. Like, I could have swore once we like found out the other buses that like it was a secret. Like, there was one bus that was social, one that was strategic, and then our bus was like the chaos bus. But I appreciate that it was completely random, but it did not feel that way. Clearly, I knew Lee and Blake through Sequester connections, but Will as well. And so just that entire like morning was just trying to build as many social bonds. Like one thing that I did on day 0, once we even with my own bus, but all the buses, I started every chat just like the other person's name and then my name to try and like make it seem like, oh, it was Josh and Dan, not Dan and Josh. Like so small little things that I think can help just like gear people. But it was a wild morning.
I think you found yourself in 2 alliances right off the bat, if I remember correctly.
I think that's right.
You, Blake and Ashley, and you, Blake and Lee, I believe. So
yeah. And like, yeah, it was because I like Ashley is a parent, so I was like, oh, we have a connection there. We're gonna have like similar kind of challenges we're waking up with every morning of trying to get our kids to and from and all that stuff. So I was like, oh, we have a nice connection. And then of course Lee and Blake, I think we just jived personally. I think we'll talk about Lee, I'm sure, but I was just like, I know he is a gamer through and throughout, and I was like, I need to be on his side as opposed to against him. So I think that was where I was thinking. But Blake was just such a cool guy that I was like, I want to work with him. And then Macy and I had a nice connection as well. And Will and I just didn't jive, but can't jive with everybody.
Well, Will's not in here. You
can't jive with everybody, but you also can't jive with a person who chooses not to jive with anybody.
They're okay. You can say that, Mitchell, and I will agree, but I will not be the first person to say it.
So you find yourself in a pretty decent spot, though, overall, I would say.
Yeah. And then the powers came out, and I was like, I was thinking about volunteering, trying to pick up some goodwill, but then things just blew up.
You were in such a swing position in those votes within the first 3 hours of the game, and everyone was looking at you and Blake and was like, "So are you going to vote for me?" Ashley being like, "So are you voting for me?" Or
walk us through the Lee and Ashley of it all.
So Lee, like I do, comes from Sequester. Sequester is typically in many games I've played in at least have been male dominated. So generally, female women go further in the game just because people want to even it out. Totally respect that and appreciate that as a game theory idea. So he tried to bring that into this game, but didn't really offer any context. And as a result, it seemed to Ashley as though he was going after her from the jump. And I mean, you didn't know what the loss of power is. Were you going to be was Ashley going to be one of the 3 people up for nomination? And I was thinking in my head, I was like, well, if everyone takes that same theory of let's all bring a woman, give a woman a loss of power, is it going to be 3 women on the chopping block and we send out the woman first? And I was like, that's not desirable. But then they just started going back and forth with each other. And I tried to logically explain the point of view to Ashley. And I think that was just not working. And so I was like, I want to keep working with you, but I have to do it this time. And hey, it worked out for her the first round because she ended up getting plague safety first. Mm-hmm. But it definitely set the tone. I think I was talking about on my confessionals that our bus broke down several times. You gave us a half tank of gas. It was a rough trip.
Yeah, I really enjoyed your metaphor. You used those metaphors quite a lot, and it was very funny and very apt at that. I don't know if there's anything super pressing otherwise coming out of the buses. But then we do lead into the first HOH, which is the plague. And I go back and watch me pull Ashley's chip. And there had to be this look of oh, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Of course I pulled Ashley's chip to get safety first. It was too perfect. But ultimately, we get led to somehow a Lee HOH. Talk through, I think this is important to talk through probably what your hand in getting Lee to that HOH position is. Because in the Plague, for those of you that don't know, safety, it's like the safety chain, similar in Sequester, but you bounce back safety and non-safety. And so ultimately, you're left with one person who is then the HOH.
Yeah, that was probably one of the more stressful days because we had like all day, but there was like a huge filibuster because Jacob was off-site. And I think it took him like 4 hours or so to make a decision. And then essentially, just as everyone was taking their time, it ended up getting towards me at like that period of time where I'm like with my daughter, and like it was day one, and I was like, it was just a mess. And so I was really hands off there. I think I would say the first half of my entire game was fueled by paranoia. The second half, I think we can talk what that was fueled by, but it really set off because of that day, because there were people telling me, oh, we're going to plague you, but you're safe, and we need you to give it to this person. And it seemed like it was mapped out. And I was like, oh my God, I'm behind in this game. Like, people already have huge connections. So Chris told me that he was giving it to me. He didn't really have like a great reason, but I don't know if anyone has a good reason at that point. And there was some picking, so I appreciate, like, it is what it is. But then he was like, you got to give it to Mark, and I just didn't have a chance to figure it out. And like Lee, Davey, and Gwen sorted it out, and I was like, whatever, just protect me, and it is what it is. I thought that could have been my, like, I could have been first boot there.
Well, it's funny. I will agree with you that the front half of your game was like you were inwardly paranoid. I don't think you were ever outwardly super paranoid.
Oh, no. Which was Justin, I think.
And you were never you were never in danger.
Exactly, and you were never in danger at all. So the paranoia, I think, was really good for you to keep you in check. But I you were absolutely in a great position in the entire game. But so yeah, do you think that in a second shot you'd be less paranoid, or do you think you just kind of, that's just your nature?
I think I'm definitely, like, in games I try and be paranoid, because like the second you like get comfortable is where someone pulls one over on you. So I don't know if I would say you probably could make the argument that I knew where every vote was going at all times. But I still was like, someone's going to get me. Someone is going to. And so just having that just kind of pushed me to keep hammering lines. Like every day, like I had a spreadsheet that had every person's name on it, and the last time I talked to them, and then I would like sort by whatever, and I would just find whoever was the oldest and hit them up the first thing in the morning and just try and go through the list over and over, just to make sure I was just touching base with every single person. Just because I was afraid that, like, even though if we weren't talking strategy with each other, or like at least if I had a good social connection, they might be not less inclined to put me up. So
to future first time players, that's how you do it. That's really it is. You keep the contact alive as best as you can. You never, especially early in that game or early in the game, the easiest excuse in the world is we didn't talk. It always will be. All right, so Ryan goes home here in this first elimination. Is there any big consequence or any thing you have to comment on Ryan's boot?
No, I liked Ryan a lot. He and I actually had some good conversations. Because he was up against.
He was up against Anthony.
Anthony. Oh, I definitely didn't want Anthony to go in the slightest. So it was a hard. I don't know who Ryan would have had to been next to maybe be safe, but I think he was caught at a bad time in his life, where he just like had work at one period of time, so he just like couldn't campaign for himself like after 2 p.m. the day he was out.
He also was sick, so
yeah, so it was
like really sick. So
yeah, I think he had more game in him, but
yeah, he definitely did. I was bummed for that, but it just kind of sometimes
it was one of those things, like you just said it, Josh. Like the easiest thing in the world is we didn't talk, and he didn't talk to Lee in the first round. Same for Anthony. He didn't talk to Lee first round. Found himself on the block.
Yeah. Okay. So then, coming off of that, we move into the Charades HOH, where there are partners. And is there any? I think that a big talking point of this HOH or this cycle was the call that happened that led to all the partners. Was there any strategy? I don't remember if you picked Chandler, if Chandler picked you, but what was your thoughts through that call? What's the strategy? What are the other pairs that you're seeing things?
So I should take a step back, because I guess the pivotal piece of like my game started day 0 and day 1 is like, since I did have some connections through Sequester, like I never thought of myself as a Sequester player. I'm a person who played Sequester. So that was not a mission that I had, was like, we got to protect all of these individuals. Yeah, it like behooves us all to keep each other safe, because the first person to flip is going to be the Judas of the group, if you will.
Right.
But I was not going to be tied. Like the people I had the strongest out of game connection with was Davey and Mark. But like otherwise, didn't really. I mean, played a few rounds with different people, but Justin is someone I like have admired in his game. And then when we came into this actual game, we like had really strong conversations off the bat. He immediately was like, "You're a person I would like to work with." He's like, "I don't plan on making too many different like alliances. I want to do something tight and sharp." And then we started talking about like who we liked, and we kind of had the idea of like it would be good if we got someone from every single bus. And I think we realized that, again, Sequester wasn't the best move to have 3 people from that group, because if we're thinking at the end of the game, if we all ride together on the Sequester thing, people are going to be like, the only reason you guys got this far is because of this out of game thing. So can we get someone who's not in that community as a part of our group? And then, of course, I had great conversations with Gwen. He had great conversations with Gwen. And that's kind of how RBG was formed, just off the bat. Another like just at-large strategy that I had, once I knew that there were so many Sequester people, is that I knew I did not want to start any single alliance. I wanted to essentially play with people who wanted to play with me. And if you weren't willing to invite me to the dance, we weren't going to dance. So you'll see that I never started a single group that was more than me and a single person, more than a one-on-one, because I just didn't want to be like kind of blamed that like Dan started this, and always wanted to have escape routes and kind of parachutes there. So luckily,
which then, in a big picture sense, I think those kind of conversations did happen for other people.
Mm-hmm.
Who started this group? Who started that group? They did this. I think that you avoided those conversations really well. That's not something I thought of.
Yeah, I mean, depends on how you sell it, but like I would never say that like the person who like created a group chat is like the person who gets credited for the group,
right? Which is a big conversation later on.
Yeah. So like that was a goal of mine, was to just always let other people kind of drive. That if I could lean on social and try and win that category at the end of the game, that would be what would get me far.
Which is fascinating, because you were so focused on your social game that some people didn't think you had a social game until it was too late. Mm-hmm. And then once they recognized that you did have a social game, they were like, "Oh crap, we got to get this guy out." And like they weren't looking at you like that at all for like 80% of the game. It was amazing.
Mm-hmm. So, of course, I had the RBG. I had Justin. I then had Blake and Lee. Lee, Blake, and I consulted on the first nominations and how that was going to go. But I was still really skeptical. I thought someone was. I knew that Lee was double, triple dipping in all sorts of different areas that I was like, I don't know where I rank in his, but I was like, we'll go with it. And then he created Reckless Ops, which consisted of Lee, Justin, Blake, myself, K-Pow, and Chandler. So once we got that group, we then had the phone call where we picked partners. I had the opportunity to pick Chandler, and then I was like, "Chandler, sorry, I just picked you, like, whatever." I don't think anyone really thought too much of it, to my understanding. But then the next day we were like, "You want to go after it?" And he was like, "Yeah, let's go after it." And so we did the thing.
Is that what you wanted?
Yeah, I wanted to win. I wanted to win one early that would be non-consequential, because the plague set me up really nicely to have logical reasons to nominate somebody and like logical reasons to get out of certain things. So when it came time to do nominations, Chandler went first, and he wanted to put Jacob up, who I probably would have put up because I didn't have great conversations with him. I think because he was, again, out of pocket for a little bit. And I was like, fine, you pick him. But I was like, who's my most logical pick? And I was like, the person who nominated me for the plague. So it was Chris. And I didn't want Chris to go out there at all. But I was like, I gotta put him up just because I can't pick someone at a random or it's gonna raise more suspicion. So that worked out, and then we played Spoon Flip.
Spoon Frog.
And I had like 13 on my practice round, and then Mitchell started watching, and I whiffed it and had 6.
Oh, you did?
What's that?
I said, oh, you did?
Yeah. So that was one I did not throw. But Chris did the thing. He got 14, I think it was. So he took himself off. And then since he did the person I gave safety to, which was another logical reason for me, was Mark. I didn't want Mark to go again. But it was like another just, hey, I did you this solid last time. You're going to do me this solid this time. And then luckily we were able to kind of push for Jacob, and not without some kinks from Ashley, who started making some phone calls. She called me that night and was like asking if I was going to backdoor her. I mean, I was not going to be the person who wanted to like ride our buses to the end, but it also didn't make sense to like flip on your bus so quickly.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when she was like,
and that was such the thing that dominated the first 4 or 5 rounds of the game was, when is it appropriate to turn on the bus? Like, when can you step away from that and towards something else?
And that's the thing, is like, if I put someone from red up, they would have given, and even if, say, I put Ashley and she wasn't the target, in another world, that would have given anybody a reason to be like, say Will won. Be like, oh, Dan, you flipped on red first, so here you are. You're going up. So just trying to give everybody like little reason to put me up going forward.
So this was PSA night, right?
That was PSA night, yeah.
So walk us through your point of view of the PSA.
Yeah, so Jacob goes out in, I think, a 10-3 vote. And the PSA goes up, and I'm just trying to go to bed. I was like, I was super nervous, again, paranoid, that because she had called me and was like, Lee's coming after me. I was like, no, Lee's not coming after you, even though he was clearly coming after you. And she's like, no, he's coming after me. He wants me to do this and that. And I was like, oh, no. And I think I like accidentally slipped up and like told her that maybe Justin said something or that someone said something, and I was like, oh no, she caught me, and the PSA is going to be all about me, because I'm also just like a very cocky is the word, I guess. And I was like, this is going to be about me, and it had nothing to do with me.
I think just maybe confident in yourself.
Yeah, I was like, it's going to be about me. This is what this game revolves around, Dan. It did not. But luckily it was not about me. And like, I don't know, I work in communications. That was a 13-minute PSA that could have been probably a tight 3.
And 2 hours earlier.
Yeah, and 2 hours earlier. So it could have been tighter, but I still think she had an ability to salvage her game at that point. I wanted to work with her. I was not incentivized at all to send out a woman in the game early. So I was trying everything I could, but it was just like at what cost to my own game. So it was what it was. Like I felt for her. I mean, I think it's in one of the videos in the confessionals, but it's a tough game. It gets to you. There's a lot going on, especially just like I didn't appreciate how difficult it is to manage 17 conversations at once. And so just it's tough.
Yeah. Well, so that leads us into Ashley's eviction eventually when we go to Blake's next HOH. Blake wins HOH. That obviously keeps you in a good spot because you, Blake, and Lee are, a really tight three at this point. And I mean, you can work backwards however you'd like. You ultimately cast a rogue vote here. I think that was pretty inconsequential, but what's the thought process through that round?
So yeah, Blake wins, and I realized he and Lee were like actually had me in their plan, because right when like it happened, they were like, "Let's get on a call." And I knew like if you find out you're the HOH and the first person you call, because it was like a pretty quick turnaround, he called me and Lee, and I was like, "Oh, this was like a thing," and so I was trying to pick up on those things as well as like the order of operations and when you called people and when you told people information. So like anytime I like knew I needed, like going back to the last vote, when I wanted to like tell people things, I would like pre-type everything to like every single person and then just like hit smash on the enter key at the same time so that everybody was getting it essentially at the same time, so that no one would be like, oh, he told me this first and that second. I was always trying to be pretty thoughtful about when I was communicating. So once I realized Blake was like legit with me, he got a lucky deal. I mean, credit to Blake. Like he got Will, who offered himself as a pawn, and Ashley was just a clear target there. So it was just like a pretty open and shut case. I felt like I kind of took the game off for a day there. And when I like said taking the game off, it was like, let me just continue like hitting people up in their DMs and just like continue to work people. Right. But like you didn't need to talk game.
Right. You just keep the groundwork.
And this is the third round in a row that you're finding yourself as a decision maker. Mm-hmm. Really, just helping formulate what's going to happen without getting much of the blood on your hands. But like being very much so in a power position.
Yeah. Because I mean, again, going back to the last vote, even though I put Chris and Mark up, I like to think I gave them enough assurances that they were not the target, that they weren't thinking like Dan's the person I need to go after first if I got HOH again. At least I'd like to think that.
Well, that was probably an important that round, maybe not important, but important for you to have a round of very low maintenance early in the game, because we're now going to go into two very, very critical back-to-back rounds of the game. Probably the two biggest tone setters in terms of how this game ultimately plays out for you and for Justin and for Gwen, really. And so we're at the Lee double eviction, and walk us through this is another round. Like I said, you, Lee, and Blake are in a good spot together. He's obviously coming to you. You're going to be untouchable in Lee's mind. So what's the angle for you here?
Yeah. So again, the league calls us first. So I was like, oh, because I was really nervous at this point that Lee had so many other things that like I could have been the person expendable to him. Because I was like, if he knows my game, he knows it would be smart for him to get me out. I thought that really every round. But sorry. So when he called me, I was like, all right, we got a good thing going here. And he decided he wanted to put up Gwen, Adam, and Will, who offered himself as a pawn.
Of course.
And I was like, how did you get to this point? Like, I was really confused because out of everything I had heard a lot from Ashley, was that like Lee was like kind of with Gwen and Adam in some way or another. So I was like, this doesn't make sense, but hey, like whatever, it's not me. Like that was always my first priority. And I was like, for the double, all we got to do is save one person. So as long as it's not two people from my alliance, I can work with that. And Lee had made this plan that like, oh, we will somehow find a way to save Will. And I was like, I'm listening, because you always got to say yes. And at the time, he had not made the nominations. So I was like, yes, we will save Will if that's what happens. And I was like, just running through the numbers. I was like, there's no way we're going to get enough people that anyone's going to want to do that. But hey, send it in.
See, so from our perspective, as we were waiting on with bated breath if that was actually going to happen, at one point it looked like that Lee had the numbers to execute his plan, and we were just like, I was sitting there just like, please no, please not this.
Yeah, I think we could have done it,
of course,
but Will was just he's not watching, whatever.
he's not in here.
He just was going about everything with like a very bad attitude. Just like between his one-on-one interactions, I had heard he had said something like unfavorable to K-Pow on a one-on-one. He just was being rude. Like a lot of people, like especially after the Ashley left, a lot of people were like kicking her while she was down, and I'm just like, she's not in the game anymore. Like that is one thing I do know about Big Brother, is that like a lot of people try and victimize the person who's out and they can't defend themselves. And like, hey, I get it, because like if they can't defend themselves, then that's who's gonna like speak against them.
Perfect chance to prop yourself up.
Exactly. But I was like, she's got enough going on, and like there was no real strategy in the kicking. It was just like blind kicking, and it just didn't jive with me. And I was like, I think another macro point about my game is that, like, I need to work with people who want to work with me. Like that was a thing that I realized about like Justin. Justin wanted to work with me, and like he put in the time to work with me. Anthony did the same. Gwen clearly did the same. There were some other people that they were like, oh, I want to work with you, but we weren't jiving. And again, if I go back to my other point, like I'm not creating any alliances. If like we're not talking strategy and you're not giving me anything, I can't give you anything. So Will wasn't giving me anything, and I
want to ask. I want to ask Will, whatever, but I want to ask, because we haven't really touched on it yet, but it's going to be really important here. Talk about your relationship up to this point with Anthony, because this is a big important point here where Adam wins the power of veto, saves himself, which is probably good for a lot of people. But now it's the big conversation point of the replacement nominee. But talk about your relationship with Anthony, because that's really important into this decision.
Yeah, so I think he was probably, once we got into the main house, so like taking it back to day zero, once like everyone started sharing their bios and he said he was a dad, I think I literally messaged him immediately and like created a group chat called Cool Dads. And I was like, I want to like keep him around because he wants to be here. And so like was really invested in him, and he did the work. Like he did a lot of work to get himself to where he was, that he was highly favored. You don't save yourself by like, I mean, other people save you, but you need to like do something to be worth saving. Right. And it's a two-way street. So I was really invested in wanting to work with him. I probably would have had him in my like third ranked. So I have like a little board over here that is like a kind of a stoplight. I think he was like third on my list. So like Justin, Gwen, and it was like Anthony. There was a few people like right below him, but I was very invested in keeping him around. And so then when Adam takes himself off, it's Gwen, Will, and to be determined. And again, Lee gives Blake and I a call, and I realized that Lee's going to try and do Anthony dirty.
So dirty.
Like real dirty.
For context, if you don't remember, Anthony, Lee, and Macy had tied in this HOH a million times, and we got them all on a call together, very intentionally on our part, to give them the opportunity to talk it out before a tiebreaker. Lee is the one that offers safety to everyone. Let's all keep each other safe. Whoever wins, that whole rigmarole, and everyone agrees. Of course, Anthony agrees even more than Macy does on that call. And within minutes, Lee's trying to put both of them on the block. And then that next day, he's trying to put Anthony on the block.
Yeah, he says in the call, the first thing he says in that call to you and Blake is, well, there's only one person who won't be able to campaign tonight. And I was on mute and I was just screaming at my phone. I was like, this is unacceptable.
Because Anthony was coaching his son's flag football game that night. So.
And I'm like, I'm also like a person that thinks about like precedent. So if you do that to Anthony, and then I have to go take care of my daughter, and like I get like, they're like, oh, Dan's busy from 4 to 6:30, and that's when the votes are like, I wasn't gonna let that continue happen, because again, like these things are just cyclical and people repeat it because it works. So So he had suggested Anthony. I was like, oh no, like if you think about all the green bus people, they'll all save him. And if you want to keep Gwen, which he said he did at the time, and I think I did a lot of work to make sure that Gwen was the pawn there. So
because if Anthony goes on the block, you're pretty confident that Gwen's the one that still is safe, and Anthony and Will go home.
That's right. I was like, whoever gets replaced is going to go out of here. And so he had toyed around with a few different names. I was really pushing. He had pushed for Davey, who I did not want to see go out there. He had then pushed. I had pushed very, very hard for Chris because, again, I was paranoid, and I was like, well, I do think that I had a good reason for putting Chris up, like just logically.
Yeah, and now at this point, Chris has already won 2 power vetoes kind of back to back before that, so kind of making himself a threat a little bit.
Yeah. And then Lee brings up the point that there is this sequester group of Chandler, Davey, and Chris, and that Lee got invited to the dance there. So we'll go into the future. That gets brought up. And the only reason that got brought up was because Lee brought it up through the game, not because of like looking externally. So that's like a point about the Blake and Chris fight, but that's a whole different point.
Right, yeah.
So eventually he was like, oh, Andrew's really well connected. No one wants to touch Andrew. And I was like, I don't think that's true. And I mean, I like Andrew. That was a thing that was tough about my game, is that I made so many good like relationships. I'd like to think that it was every person I lost was a number for me. So I had a good thing going on with Andrew. I think he would have expected my vote, but I had just greater debts to Gwen. So I was able to Blake and I were able to convince him to do Andrew, and Andrew and Will went home.
Yeah, that was such a turning point. I also think that I don't know. I think you guys were really instrumental in that. And I remember one point being that Lee was really worried about the blood on his hands if he were to put a different person up other than Anthony. And then I think as you guys started convincing him, also people like Chandler and PayPal started also convincing, which I thought was a big turning point for Lee to actually pull the trigger, because those are the people he was worried about, like
being upset about it. And he was concerned about it being like the shot against the sequester. Like, and you guys did a really great job of snowing him into thinking that it wouldn't hurt him to take that shot at someone who was tangentially aligned with Chandler and Chris and Davey. And
so were people upset that Andrew went up?
I don't think necessarily ultimately. I think Lee thought that people might be upset about that. The only people who were really upset about it were the people who were caught off guard by it, which was like Chris and Davey. And I think that was it.
That's probably it. Yeah, and even then, like, I think from a logic point of view, the sequester thing is a thing, but I think logically they could see how that was a safer, in a sense, a safe move for Lee, like optically. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, this is the round where I think I started my string of throwing competitions when I realized just like where I was in the game. So like I made Mitchell watch me with a blindfold on for 13 minutes as I was just
that was one of my favorite moments from just like hosting you, because you were like, all right, Mitchell, I do not want to win this game, but I need some time to think. And so you just put your blindfold up and you were just like, just get my attention in 15 minutes somehow. I don't know how you're gonna do it, but just get it in 15 minutes somehow.
And I think the thing that's most wild about it is like I know there were people practicing like crazy. So like I didn't practice at all, which was great because I was just like able to again continue working on people. But then we would like fast forward to the decathlon or whatever, pentathlon. I like nailed that time.
Yeah.
And like did not practice at all, so I was like, that feels good.
I remember texting Josh and being like, I'm just sitting on this call with Dan. I really think he just like had built this time to do the comp. Like, you know, like when he'd planned it with his wife, that he knew that he would have like 20 minutes. I think he just needs some time. I think he just needs some Dan time just to chill.
Yeah, like because like, you don't. I mean, we all like live lives, so like I gotta work and like take care of home life. So like between like going on a run, showering, and like carving out specific times, there's like not a lot of time to like truly think about the game, and 15 seconds in a blindfold, 15 minutes in a blindfold was perfect.
So that then leads us to another competition you very much threw, where Davey wins the Deal or No Deal HOHs. I think you threw it. I don't know. That one's pretty easy to throw in a sense. Davey wins HOH, and this is another very pivotal HOH cycle, or just eviction cycle of the game, because we have the infamous creation of Smiley, the infamous flip on Adam. We have all these things here. Talk us through it.
Yeah, so I think the undertold story for this week was that morning I actually was on a phone call with Davey. I enjoy getting on phone calls, just because it takes a lot of time to write something that is actually what you mean and can be easily interpreted. That I was like, if I can just jump on a phone call with somebody, we can hash things out and feel I can see what you are feeling and if you're actually lying to me or not. And so I've again had a really good have a good relationship with Davey kind of outside the game. I just admire him as a player. That even though we weren't really in sync in the game, it was just good to line up about what are you thinking? What are you thinking? We talked a lot about how Lee was kind of a snake and needed to be set up to go. I told Davey that Lee was thinking about putting him up as a renom, and it was frustrating because Lee had only told me and Blake that, and then Lee immediately was like, Davey just told me that he heard that he was a potential renom, and I was like, Davey's gonna blow up my game right now. So that was why I was like, I can't trust Davey too much. But then Davey won the HOH, and he was like, during that phone call before he won, he was like, I think I'm going to put up Macy because Macy put up a video, which was a very goofy, very funny.
Macy's infamous fake PSA.
Exactly. She named Davey, and I guess they didn't have a great relationship or whatever. So it was she was going to be the easy nom, and that someone from Red needs to go, or another person from Red needs to go. So it was a bunch of different reasons. Then of course you just tell people yes, I will do that. And I was like, well, who are you going to put up next to him? And he's like, well, I don't think Adam will go. And I was like, I really would love to work with Adam. I tried really hard to work with Adam in the game. He was someone I worked overtime on the social front, but he just never never invited me to the party. So when he's like Adam, I was like, okay, we can work with that. And then Justin had the idea to that he also wasn't tight with Adam, and that Gwen was kind of iffy on Adam because they were kind of associated with each other, but maybe not. That was a relationship I still don't fully understand or appreciate. But that Macy kind of benefited all of our games. I know I had to do a lot of work the night before with K-Pow, because K-Pow was, I think, A, suspicious of me and thought I was B, very close with Lee and Blake, which I think if you took it on face value, it would make sense. So I had to do a lot of work with her just to make her feel good that I was willing to flip on Lee. And then the day of the nominations, we had the idea to create Smiley. So I called Macy and I was like, hey, this is a wild idea. It might be a Hail Mary, but we can do this. And then at the same time, I was talking with Lee and Blake, and I was like, hey, I think there might be some people willing to save Macy. And so that was when we were able to pin it on Lee, that actual vote. So I feel bad. Lee definitely ran so I could walk in this game. So he took the brunt of leading that flip. But we had Smiley, and I think everyone felt really confident about it because it was a true test. If we were able to do the vote, Smiley was good. We had all six of us. Anyone on the other side was definitely on the outs, and then Lee and Blake were kind of tangentially tied to us. So we
this was the turning point of Hometowns 11, for sure. The creation of Smiley. It's one of those moments, in my opinion, you really benefited from the these games are sometimes about luck.
Mhm.
And you really benefited from Davey making a terrible decision. Sorry, Davey. But like he literally, like putting a Batum made no sense for Davey's game. And he was positioned in a place at that moment where he could have really thrown a wrench in like your game and in Blake's game and in Lee's game. And just somehow it just didn't happen. And it was one of those moments that you benefited from like the 10% luck portion of these types of games.
I don't think we did not have that phone call, I think I would have been alongside Macy.
That's possible.
I like just feel like, if you want to get Macy out, you put her up against someone on red.
Yeah.
Because
like this literally happened right after Andrew got backdoored. And Andrew was someone that Davey was connected to and Chris was connected to, and they were connected with Chandler, and you would have thought that they would have taken a shot with the power that they had to do something. And I still don't understand Davey's reasoning behind what he did there. It just didn't make sense in my opinion for his game, but it benefited you, and it helped position you guys to create Smiley, and who really created Smiley? We have no idea. It's impossible to know.
That is a team effort because like Macy created the group, but like Anthony and K-Pow needed to have bought in on it. Gwen needed to have like sold it through on the Girls Alliance. Justin did conceive the idea, but it would not have probably happened if he did not propose it to me and I had a good relationship with it. Like everybody gets part of it.
Everyone had a piece. Yeah, exactly. But then it sets you guys up. And I remember saying at that point in time, this is probably the group that could run through the rest of this game if they really want to, if things break for them the correct way.
Yeah. And like similar to like how Justin and I talked about in day one, like we didn't want to do too many things. We just wanted to be really firm in them. So like once we made Smiley, like that was where I was pretty dug in on and was willing to go to final six with all six of them, and how we wanted to fight it out. So be it. But and I'm sure that will cue into a later part of the game. But I was down for it. And then like the other part that happened that night was I was on a phone call with Lee and Blake, and we were conceiving this flip. And I was like, Lee, you should just like not tell a few people. Like just don't tell Chris and don't tell Mark. And so he's like, no, we're not gonna tell him. Nobody tell him. I remember telling Mark that night, but nobody told Chris, and I think that's what then fueled so much anger. Was just keeping people in the dark.
Well, it was a perfect storm. I mean, these two rounds are just so wonderfully executed because your idea was to pin it on Lee, and with that, that's a thing. What you just said, that really interesting. I didn't know about that because now the one person who has the most motivation to go against Lee, who would otherwise maybe have motivation to go against you or other, Chris wins C+4 and wins HOH, and now it's all set up to backdoor Lee.
Yeah, and I thought this was my round to go up. I was pretty shocked, all things considered, that Justin and K-Pow were nommed. I think I don't exactly recall Chris's motivations for putting them up from the jump. I guess maybe they thought Chandler. Okay, yeah.
But my recollection is Chandler really sold them down the river. With Lee and Chandler both sold them down the river, and I
do recall Lee saying that he was going to put it on K-Pow and Justin, and I was just like so shocked about that. But it also kind of benefited me because I should have been nommed and I could have been renommed there, just like on the logical front.
Yeah, tit for tat, right?
Exactly. But. And even that was a garbage, not garbage for me. Comp was the C+4. I'd like to say that I threw it, but I just was out of my depth, and just immediately was like, I'm going to go back to talking with people and hang out and just know that this might be where I take a lick. But then Gwen wins the power veto, pulls off K-Pow, which was a huge move for RBG because it provided a little bit of cover to the Gwen Justin connection. At the same time, I think there was a concerted effort. I don't know if this actually impacted Chris's decision, but there was a concerted effort to like blow up a bunch of people's games. So we blew up Endgame, which was created. I know Anthony and I both did that, and I'm sure a few other people might have done the same.
And timing was everything in this game in these couple rounds because, granted, Lee was all over Endgame, and not a single person in this game would say, I trust Lee 100%. Maybe not even Lee. But you had Smiley formed, and then Endgame was formed an hour later, right after. And that when everyone's already bought into Smiley, and then this new alliance comes in, whether by good motives or not, those people that were overlapped were like, oh, guys, get a load of this.
Well, and the Endgame alliance never really even lasted super long because Chandler exposed it to Davey and Chris like almost immediately. So it was one of those things, or it was the pieces just fell in place for Lee's demise here.
Yeah, I mean, this is not my place to critique it, like his way of building like alliances, but like in theory, I would have just like gone to every single person and be like, "Hey, do you think this is a good idea?" and then do it, as opposed to like, "Here, join this group and hope for the best." But
he knew he was well. And the thing is about Lee's game, and we talked about this in his exit interview, but he knew it was coming for him. He knew eventually it just was all the things he was doing was just gonna catch up to him. So.
The only thing that I think that you could have benefited from having Lee last a little bit longer was once he was not that this would have mattered for you because it really wouldn't have. Once Lee was out of the game and he learned about how your game was operating, he would have been the biggest Dan alt jury vote. Up for that you would have had his vote easily because of how impressed he was with your game once he went out the door. Now, like I said, I think you would have found jury votes just fine. But, anyway, there's that.
Yeah, I was very, very concerned about Lee because, again, I thought he had a million different things, and he's a very smart player. So I was like, he definitely has some other things going on that if he got the jury, I could be the first person dropped there. I think it's always smart to, like, be the number 3 in an alliance. To have someone running it, have someone as their like second command, and then be in the third. And I felt that way with both RBG for a while and for this Blake Lee trio, was like letting them be out in front a little bit. But I just knew that if Lee got to the jury, that he would cut number 3. But
and so I mean that kind of caps off the first half of the game. And I would say from my perspective and my point of view, watching. And Mitchell and I talked about this. I don't know how much of the content on the viewing party you've watched, but there were people in the game that put a lot of effort into cultivating those relationships outside of the sequester undercurrent, and you and Justin were atop of that list, and therefore, because of that, I was. For you two specifically, was really rooting, and Anthony for other reasons, but like really rooting for you guys, and also really rooting for you to cross this round so you can get on the jury. Because that front half of the game, it's like, okay, how do we get all the good people that we really would like to see on the jury to the jury? And then we get to the jury, and then what I want from that point is a mess. I want everything to go every which way, which it did not, which is okay.
Sorry about that.
Which it did not. And so anyway, we cross over to the jury phase of the game. Any significance there for you crossing that hurdle?
Yeah, I knew that was one that I definitely wanted to toss. So that was touchy subjects. I knew I did not want to be the first person to throw the first stone. I had also just like throughout the entire game, just anytime I talked to people, just been mentioning that Chris was a comp threat. I knew that I have comp capabilities. So I was like, I need to have someone who's, if Lee's not going to be there, I need someone else who's pretty good at comps to stay around. And then immediately after the Lee blindside, I had started to like working on Chris, not blindside, backdoor. I started working on Chris a little bit, just like trying to just kind of be in his good graces and trying to continue to have a strong connection with him, which I thought had been fading. So that week was an HOH. I threw that. I knew Justin was going to nominate Chris and Blake off the jump. In theory, I was all about Chris going home because you just got to say that. But when I got drawn for the veto, what was the veto?
It was the quotes.
Quotes. Yeah, so I think there was, 15 quotes?
Sure.
I think I missed 3 of them. Sure.
Right.
And so like I could have won that veto and kept them the same. But Justin had told me that if Chris won the veto, that Chandler would have gone up. I knew that at least me throwing it would give Chris better odds. So Chris wins it, puts Chandler up. I knew Chandler needed to go because Chandler and I were probably playing a very similar game, just on different sides. And so there can only be one.
Yeah, Chandler was super well insulated, and I did not see him getting voted out until he was voted out. Yeah.
To back up real quick, because I think it's important if that you have any insight on it. What was any thoughts on the actual touchy subject results?
I take them with a grain of salt. My goal was to hopefully not be named ever. I was only named once, and it was who do you want to like be in the house with? Which I was like, that's nice. I like it. It's tough because you deal with a lot of like recency bias. That's why like I think Justin got a lot of the in charge ones, and Blake got a lot of the like they're a shitty person ones. I think it was the best that it happened to Blake, just because he could.
To be fair, those were all accurate for Blake.
I was gonna say, Mitchell, did you vote for those? I think it was good that he got those because he just like can take them on the chin in a positive way.
Yeah.
So I didn't like I only invested as much to like allow it to like dictate strategy. So like I would tell people that like yeah Justin's leading the game just again to continue to prop him up as someone who's out in front, and that like in theory, and the way I just treated this game once we really got into jury, it was like everyone can say you're leading, but if you're not like I felt that I was making unique moves that were getting me further along. That like no matter what would have happened, if we all played the same game, at least if I have ways to differentiate myself, that like I could have won a jury vote if I argued it. So it was like even if Justin says he's like they're saying he's leading it, like that's only going to matter so much. But I would continue to tell people, oh, he's leading it. Oh, Chris is going to win every comp. He needs to get backdoored. Like you work with those truths as they benefit you.
Right, of course.
And so if I'm not named, then you can't use that against me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. I mean, ideally, you have your name heard the least amount of times in that competition. Granted, unless Justin has named a bunch and he won the game. So hats off to him. So anyway, we move on to the next HOH, which is kind of starts this little trend of people winning an HOH and then getting evicted. But we have K-Pow who wins the Plinko HOH. That ideally, I'm assuming that is nothing but music to your ears at that point.
At the time, yes. I don't think I realized that like I was as high on her radar. But she put up Macy and Davey, knowing that Chris needed to be the back door. Again, I didn't necessarily want Chris to go out here, and we'll talk about the power of veto, but actively kind of wanted to make sure he would be he was completely backdoored, so he didn't even have a shot.
He did not play.
Yeah. At that point, though, so here's what I started doing. At this point, I needed to start trying to elevate other people. So I don't think anyone knows this. I bought Davey the upgraded version of Flappy Dunk, which I was like, oh, Josh, can I do this? And you're like, yeah, sure. One, I was like, I like Davey a lot as a person, but I was like, if I can elevate him as like a comp threat, knowing that Chris is going to go out, that's going to be another person that's kind of out in front. Also, I wanted to see Davey win. Like that was just like something I wanted, like personally. I felt like he didn't have like other than Deal or No Deal, didn't have many wins, and so he got head of household and a veto that could have been compelling from like a just elevating threat levels and managing other people's threat levels. Also, he's like a teacher, and so like he just has a lot of other things going on. That, like if you can like cut down on the time that it takes for you to like play another round, I was like, let's go get after it, Davey. And I was like, I have $3 all day for you to play Flappy Dunk your heart out. So he didn't win, but right. I was going to be interested to see if that was going to like come back to bite me, or if it was going to be like a nice jury management piece.
Right.
So Chris gets voted out. I think the other thing is going into Plinko. Chris messaged me and he was like, "The only person I will not nominate is you, Dan." I was like, "What? You're telling me that you're not going to nominate me? Like out of everybody?" Even like I was astounded. And that was another thing. Like Chandler on his exit video was like, "Dan is like an honest person. Like Dan, you have my vote." Chris was like, "Dan, you're my vote." I was like, "What are you guys saying? Please don't tell the other people this."
Yeah.
I was like, "Josh, if you're telling them that they got to say something nice to me on their way out, like you can stop it. Do not encourage this."
It was remarkable how many people walked out the door. Probably a lot because of your doing, and we're just like, Dan's the greatest guy that I've ever met in my life.
Yeah, and I mean that was the game. Like the kind of person I am is like I like to tell people straight up what I'm gonna do and like give solid logic reasoning. And I know other people were saying that other people did the dirty work so that I could play a straightforward game, but like I don't think that's accurate. Like I was doing the dirty work and telling you straight up what I was gonna do. I wasn't gonna tell you how I got to there. And so I tried to be as truthful as I could. And
well, you said at one point that you were playing and I thought that this was really true, is you were playing a very straightforward social game. Your social game was very straightforward, and that led to you be able to shoot straight with people. But that made your strategic game, top notch, and you were playing all kinds of layers on your strategic game, but all under this umbrella of a very straightforward, simple social game.
Yeah. And I know I talked about this towards the Anthony vote. It's just like, so I work in communications again. And the thing we coach clients on is like building a trust bank, being able to tell enough, like building up goodwill. You see like clients like McDonald's do this all the time. They have the Ronald McDonald house charities so that they can like continue to like do all this good stuff. But meanwhile, they sell cheeseburgers, and like cheeseburgers are not inherently great, and like all these bad things happen.
Their
like,
cheeseburgers are great, though. I've eaten literally. I have to say this. I can guarantee you, I've eaten over 1,000 McDonald's cheeseburgers in my lifetime.
Same.
There, I've said it.
So, but like they are still considered to be a great company, and like have all like they're a great brand. It's because they build up a bank of trust, and that when something bad happens, like they'll still recover. And so that was what I wanted to do in this game, was just like tell as many truths as I could, did not lie many times unless I needed to. And so I think that's where I think we heard it in jury a lot, is that like people were lying to people, saying, "Oh, I got your back," and then they voted them out. And so I just never had to do that.
Mm-hmm. And so then we move into another. So the Blake is so interesting in this game because he's super compelling, super interesting on that front. But in this specific game, his front half of the game, he was in great positions, and then honestly just got left out of Smiley, and that put him on an island. And so then you throw the trivia knockout, and Blake wins HOH here as that begins. So talk through that.
Yeah. So I think probably the Chris vote, maybe the Chandler vote, I realized that a double's coming. And so I knew I did not want to have power leading up to it, because I didn't want to get isolated out of being in contention for the double.
As Blake every time did.
What's that?
As Blake did both times.
Yeah. So when we got to the knockout trivia, I was shocked to be in the final three. Like I was like, nobody picked me, and so I didn't compete, and so I had to like badly throw it, even though I clearly know when Video Killed the Radio Star aired. And so I like badly threw it and had to then badly make a lie. That was probably my worst lie of the game, was that I did not grow up watching TV. and then I knew when TRL started. That is a bad lie. But it seemingly worked. I don't know who believed it, but so Blake gets HOH, and I think that was a tough part about Blake's game is that, like, again, I need to play with people who are as invested in the game as me, and he had a lot of things going on, and I just didn't feel like I was getting as much from him as I could have given him as compared to other people. So I think that's why he got left out of Smiley, and why he just kind of ended up being on the outs, because I think other people probably felt similarly, if I had to guess. But when he won, he was like, oh, I think I'm going to do a few different things. I'm going to ask around. And I was like, oh, the logical thing is Mark and Davey. Davey put you up, or something like that. Or I don't know exactly what it was. But luckily, I mean, not luckily, but he is just a savvy game player. He's been around the block a few different times, played these games. And so I think he made probably, I'd like to think, the play of the game by just being like, hey, everyone's saying this, and so everyone's covering up for that, and I'm going to go after that. And they're like, hey, it was lucky for me in that it wasn't me, because in theory, if we were not on the red bus and we did not have a strong connection, that no one would have said my name. So it easily could have been me. But he put up Justin and Kate.
It might have even been. It could have potentially been better for him if it was you in some regards, if he's going to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway,
which might be a common thread,
right?
But he puts up Justin and K-Pow, and then that was the first competition where I was like, oh, I need to win, because I had asked him who he was going to nominate, and he told me it was either going to be Gwen or Anthony. I think just depending on who came off. And that same day, Justin sold K-Pow down the river by telling me that she was going to be coming after me. And so I knew that if I could, A, keep the noms the same, and B, lock in people to save Justin, that I would keep Gwen off, keep Anthony off, and get the person that's coming after me off. So I won. That was the face mash.
Yep.
And you were just very weirdly good.
Yeah.
I don't like. I thought I had an okay score, but
no. Both times you did that, you destroyed everybody.
Yeah, I like that one. It was fun. I was able to recognize people.
That's a Mitchell competition. He created that was his child.
I was very proud of it.
You created all those people?
I did.
Again, that was the biggest mistake, was that Mark Anthony wasn't there.
Yeah, that is.
Sorry.
It would have been Anthony Mark, but
it's true.
I'm trying to think, and I think it also again helped lock up RBG and dismay that Justin and I were connected, because you would think if Justin and I are such a pair that I would have used the veto on him, but since I didn't.
Right. How did you smooth this over, or how did you play this with Smiley? Because in theory, you take one of your alliance members off. How do you play that with them?
So it wasn't that hard, because I told Gwen separately that she was a potential renom. I told Anthony that she was a potential renom. I think Macy knew because of the red bus stuff. So I was like, it's going to be two Smiley regardless. So I was like, I want to pick the two that are up. And then Justin clearly knew that at that point. So, I mean, it was, I think my worst jury management was with K-Pow, because I just kind of no-sold her and just was like, this is why I'm doing it, and sorry. So that was tough, but there was no real, everyone was just like, I get it.
One of those times you have to just kind of push through it, know that, for better or for worse, she's going to be gone in a couple hours and we'll move forward.
And I think I know that Maisie was kind of nervous about her, because just K-Pow is a great person, and great people can win games. If you can make it to the end in a dirty game, just being the nicest person, I could vote for you. So I just did a lot of work that day to convince Mark, convince Davey.
That was I think you're talking about what my question was. Just Because Justin, from our perspective, was the obvious target.
Yeah. I think we just like talked about how like nice she is and like how well connected she is. I don't think I again tried not to like weaponize like three females working together as being an alliance, just
Right.
like a situation of the game. But I think we're just saying, oh, that like, I mean, it was kind of surprising that I knew that Blake and K-Pow had played a game outside of this together, so I was surprised that they had worked together or that he had nommed her. But I was like, she's very well connected. If you like see, I put up like a sequester map of like who knew each other, and I think she was the most well connected outside of the game coming into it. And while you don't want to bring all that in, you do have to factor it.
So we do lose K-Pow here unanimously, which is really a testament to Justin's installation, RBG's work, kind of a culmination of all you guys are really the effort you guys are putting in, and then the double is announced. This is where we have a day off. I don't know if anything substantial happens on that. You were, I think everyone just kind of took the day off to be the day off.
Yeah,
which is really nice. So we have the day off, but everyone knows that the double eviction's coming the next round, which has been your sights have been set on this double eviction pretty much since the jury started. That this was the one you wanted to win. Did you have any suspicion of what the competition would be? And talk us through it.
Yeah. So again, like during like lunch or something like that, I would just like put on like different BBH seasons, try and follow it to the same kind of episode as where we were in the game. I would always just do it like 2x and just see what I can pick up. And I just remember watching BBH 9 like 30 minutes before the game, and I remember it was a double, and Kieran did the memory comp, and I was like, oh, it could be the memory comp. The other thing is, I know we're not supposed to tip anybody off from each other about like what the competitions are. The one thing that Justin said to me was you might want to do it in like a quiet place. And so I was like trying to think of like what that could be. And I don't think that is truly tipping it off. Maybe skirts it. Yeah. But he told me that, and I was like, it could be the memory competition. And like, luckily I'd like through work, they like brought in this guy who like teaches us memory challenges and stuff. So there's this like thing called the Memory Palace, where if you can like convince in your mind what a house looks like, and so like your own house, and you assign different numbers to different rooms, and then put words in those rooms, then you can like trace the house in your mind and like remember what those words are. So it's a thing you can like study. But when it was that, I was like, oh, I can just do a Memory Palace. I have a Memory Palace of 20, and I was trying to hopefully remember a few more. But I got to 20, and that was in enough time, and that sealed the deal. I mean, hey, it could have been Justin.
Yeah, it was close.
And I don't think that would have been the worst case for me either. But I was glad it was us.
Mm-hmm. So talk us through what your plan is, because now, I mean, ultimately, the big ticket of Vic D here is Blake. Is Blake, and you have to navigate a lot through that, and there's something I'll talk about in a second with that, but talk us through kind of initial thoughts of all of it.
Yeah, so I mean, again, I was locked in on Smiley. There was, I guess, what is it? 9 people remaining in the game. No, is that 9?
That's top 8.
Top 8. 6. Oh no, because K-Pow is gone. So yes, 8. I was like, all right, Smiley's safe. Let's nominate the outside. The previous round, because Blake had said like, oh, I'm protecting Mark and Davey, who were everyone's assumed pick. I tried to like weaponize the non-Smiley as a group, even though it was factually inaccurate, but it had some sort of merit. And I mean, I couldn't just be like, hey, we have a group of 5 here, and we're going to run the game. And sorry, like that just was not gonna fly, especially if one person gets safe. So I had to use that as like some flawed logic. I was, I think, very concerned about Blake because I did think that he had potential to win more comps down the stretch, and in a way he was erratic. by picking Justin and K-Pow, and I was like, he could easily have picked me. So I was like, you got to go up. And I felt bad to do Davey and Mark. Again, they were two people I was really close with. Mark had told me that I was his final two pretty regularly and pretty early on. But he just, and this is a challenge, was he didn't necessarily for me, invest enough into the alliance itself that like I felt that he was being accurate. So like I was like, how many final twos is he promising to people? And if he just because he says it doesn't mean that it's accurate until like you're willing to show me in some way or form or fashion. So it was like I felt like I was always coming to him being like, here's what I'm voting. We never worked together. So I was like, I feel bad because I had already nominated him. And I know he was blindsided by it, but I was like, that's the way it has to be. And so yeah, I put those three up, and then the next day I had a strong feeling it might be Stay or Fold. And so I had looked at that and then looked at like actual Big Brother and suggested how they run that. And I kind of created a plan. I was like, Macy, if you're down with this, Justin's down with this. We had a kind of plan, and luckily we were able to execute, and we're lucky there. So then I won that as well, and which I probably should have thrown at that point. That probably would have been behooved me. But I think the other piece I haven't touched on is like I like the game. I like to win. Winning is a lot of fun.
Right.
And like I wanted to play not only a winning game, but like for me, what I thought might be the best game of like Big Brother. So like I wanted to play again the best game, and I felt like winning was is a metric for how to prove that. And so I was like, all right, let's win that one too.
Mm-hmm. So you do win that one, and this is what I was going to bring up. That night, I had a softball game, so I was on my way to my softball game, and Blake gets on
30
the call.
29.
Yeah, was that that must have been it?
30-29.
Yeah, that must have been that night. Because so right before that game, we you and Blake get on a phone call, and that was probably one of my favorite conversations to listen in on because Blake got on and he pleaded for his life, and really worked really hard on you and made a lot of valid points. You made his argument, talk through kind of that conversation because I feel like that was an important conversation because in Blake's mind, keeping him was best for your game. Getting to the end, you didn't quite see it that way. Talk through that.
So, again, like I had thought I had a lot of time to think through what I was going to do if I won a double because I had been planning for the double for a long time. I felt really good about Anthony. I felt like I had done enough work early on to keep him safe. That like in theory that would get paid back to me. I felt of course good about Justin and Gwen, and I felt great about Macy. I also felt good that Macy was not going to necessarily win any competitions immediately over like if I had performed as well as I wanted to, and that's no shade. Macy definitely deserves all the shine, but I was like, Blake's a very valuable competitor. And I also thought that Justin's quote unquote leading the game because that was his pitch for the most logical like renom. And ultimately I just wanted to like continue to be loyal. Like we're like, if I ever play BBH again, I want people to know that like I was a loyal player. Cause like this is one game and people are going to hopefully watch this game and be like, oh, Dan formed a day one 3-person alliance and like rode it to the end. Cool. Like maybe that's someone I could work with in the future. Again, like if we look at like my
always thinking about the long game,
playing the
long game.
I wasn't trying to win this game. I was trying to win this game, but I'm trying to win every game. And so like, cause like in Sequester, like I do not play like a loyal game. And like, that's why assuming people were going to know coming into this with all the people. So I was like, I gotta honor the people I kind of wrote in with. So Blake definitely brought up like a good point, but I think he's too savvy of a player that like if he was in the final 3, like I think he still would have cut me. Like there was no one who was not going to cut me. So
And this is where, unfortunately, your strategy of I'm going to push all these other people in front of me, and I'm just going to keep trying and push people. It was just like no one was buying it anymore. And unfortunately, from like 8 on, you were just in a position where you had to keep saving yourself. You basically had to win to the end.
But I don't know if that's true though, because like
it's not necessarily true, and we're going to talk about that when we get to the round of 6.
Yeah.
But it's like half true,
sure,
because you did end up winning your way to the end, and I'm not 100% sure what would have happened at 6 had you not won.
Yeah, I don't know, like it's because I had thought about it. Like I could choose to like not necessarily choose to throw a comp because I wouldn't think you would throw one that late in the game. But I was like, oh, I could probably like afford to not win one and still make it through. But at that point, I was like, I want the record. I was like, I want the comps, and I wanted to play the hardest game I could. But we'll get there. We'll get there.
So, well, let's get there because unless you have anything else to comment on the double eviction, we lose Blake and Davey, and then we get to the most, I think, stress-inducing round for me to watch in a while was the final 6. I cannot go past this point without paying my respects to the late Alex Trebek because we played Jeopardy. Saddest news ever. I'm gonna actually probably write something about Alex Trebek tomorrow. Big influence on my life. Love game shows my whole life, so that's a big deal. But anyway, Jeopardy. We played Jeopardy, and that, as it being one of the most stressful parts of the game in that round, was also one of the most fun moments of the game when Anthony does win the HOH here. Because though I knew in my heart of hearts that he wouldn't play it right, I just knew in my heart of hearts. It was one fun for Anthony to win a competition that he had prepared for, that no one else that played prepared for. And 2, there's that glimmer of hope that maybe he goes to the jugular here. He does not. Before that, I do want to say the round before we have the weird vote. The weird vote where Macy does vote for Blake to stay. That plays into everything coming up. What were you going to say, Mitchell?
I was just going to say that like the reason that round is so good for your like game and your legacy as like you're playing in 11 is that like I hate when something just like steamrolls from the beginning to the end. And like if you were going to win this game, I really wanted you to like have to have some adversity. And so like for you to get put on the block here at 6, like even though like I was standing Anthony a lot, I also really was enjoying your game. And I was like, okay, this is good for Dan. Like he has to have a little bit of adversity. Especially if you and Justin had been on the block as you should have been, that adversity would have made your guys' alliance and your story much more compelling than what it ultimately ends up being with y'all just kind of like to the end. But
so I think this round is marked by just like a flow of information, how information flows from the top, really not even from the top. The information flows around the 6 of you. So what's your take on how this round kind of plays out?
Yeah, so it's a 3-1, 2-1, 3-1 save. I think that's the
1, 2, 3-1. Yes, 3-1.
And it was so interesting because going into that, like into the double, Anthony had, I think he was playing like a Devon game, if I've heard about it enough, is that like he was throwing a lot of things into the wind, seeing what stuck and what would come back around. And so at one point he mentioned to me that like, oh, we're going to put up Mark, Davey, and Blake, and we're going to save Blake, right? And I was like, no, like that's not the plan. We had talked about saving Mark as a Smiley group for a long time, but I like didn't really pay it much attention, but I like logged it in my memory. So when it was a 3-1 vote, and like again, Macy did the thing. Like she pulled off a great move. I did not see it coming. Like I don't know if necessarily she was lying that Anthony told her to potentially throw a hinky.
I think it was all Macy.
Yeah, but she was like, someone came up to me and said, you should consider doing this and that we could potentially save Blake. And I was like, oh, that sounds like Anthony. So when that all happened, I was like,
She wanted to save Blake.
Oh, sure.
She wanted to save Blake. That was ultimately what it actually came down to. And she actually was, y'all didn't think she was trying to do anything, but she was trying to save Blake.
Yeah. It would have been an uphill battle just because she would have needed to get three people, because I would have broken it for Mark.
Right.
But and again, no shade, all shine to me.
You would have broken it for Mark because you had talked to Blake and said you would have considered saving him. Was that all lip service, or were you
all lip service?
Okay.
I couldn't. I don't like to lie to people on their way out, but it just did not behoove me to say otherwise and figure that out. So Anthony, I guess, calls Justin and was like, oh, I'm going to nominate Dan as the target alongside Mark, I think. And then maybe a couple hours later, Anthony starts hitting me up and says, like, hey, I just want to talk to you about noms. I'm thinking about putting you up. And I was like, okay, let's talk about that. And I was like, I'm again a logic-driven player. You need to have a logical reason for doing things. I did not see a clear logical reason to put me up as a nom, as a pawn.
Right, of course.
I was like,
there wasn't one.
Exactly. So I was
to be fair though, when you get to Big Brother at Final Six, the options are so limited, and ultimately, in the way I view it, it's not ultimately that big a deal because everybody competes for veto, and that those are really where the rounds shift. Sure. That's my opinion, though.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I was also trying to play a perfect game of not getting on the block, and so I definitely did not mind going on the block, but I just let's call a spade here, and if you want to say I'm the target, go for it, but don't lie to me. Say I'm the pawn, and then put me up against Smiley if you're gonna claim that you're true to this alliance. And so, I mean, he was pulling every trick he could, and I appreciate it. But at the time, I mean, I had known that he had been double, triple dipping with a bunch of other people. He was in sharpshooters, and I didn't know he was in Mafia, but I knew that he had basically everyone felt that he was flipping on him. So I was like, I felt he was flipping on me, and I called. I'm sure the confessionals come out. I called him a leech in the game because he was just sucking the game out of other people, and then just going on hey, you gotta play a winning game, and full respect to him. But in the moment, I was like, just tell me I'm the target. It's not gonna make me compete less in the veto, but I can see through your BS, and so if I go out here, I'm going to remember that you told me I was the pawn. I probably would not have voted for him to win if I went out there and he was in the finals if he told me I was the pawn. That's how I would have taken it. Right. If he had told me I was a target, I always respect it. I generally respect anyone who takes me out of a game. So that was my perspective. And then we had the cup balancing.
Well, and so this is where I want to jump in because I don't know what you've seen or what you have viewed in the viewing party, but when you got put up on the block, and this is less of an indictment against you, but it's just the way that RBG acted made no sense to me in how desperately they tried to save you that round before the veto was even a thing. And I'm curious what you have to say about that, because from my perspective, they should have been buttering you up for your jury vote because you should have gone at 6 and they should have been willing to.
The two of them should have been worried about themselves.
Yeah, they were so worried about you, and I don't know how you did that, and I want to bottle that up, and I want some of it.
I think I don't know if it's because I think they might have thought I was the number 3, in the RBG group that like because I had won a few competitions, but had not gone on my run yet.
Right.
And so they might have thought that like if they keep me, that's going to work out well for them. I think they thought maybe I was a shield. I don't exactly know, but like.
Oh, I'm gonna grill Justin on this and he's watching, so he just needs to start preparing a good 5-paragraph essay as to why he wanted so desperately to keep you in the game at Final Six.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because I sold them that like this is a game for $0 and we gotta just play to get to the end together and make BBH history. And like, wouldn't it be great for a day zero alliance to get to the very end? Like,
so here's my question. So if Anthony wins HOH, I mean, this could be revisionist. So who knows what actually would have happened? Anthony wins HOH and calls you and says, "I'm putting Justin up. He's the target." How do you work from there? Do you do the same kind of bidding, or like you try and keep them alive?
Yeah,
because I think you do too. Yeah.
Yeah. Like again, I was playing. Like the people that got me there, like I was going to ride to the end because again, I felt like if I get to the end with anybody, I can win. I can sell my case. So why not bring the people that like that I worked with?
I guess from the outside perspective, I look at it and there's only 2 seats in the end and there's only one winner. So you guys all are putting yourself in the situation where you're not having the best odds to win. And Josh and I got on a stream after that eviction or after that, HOH, and I just ranted for 10 minutes about how like 2 of you were going to lose the game. Even if you made it to the end, 2 of you were putting yourself in a losing position.
And when at that point, we really thought it was Gwen and Justin.
We really did. And it really wasn't an indictment on you because you had nothing to do with it because you were just trying to survive.
Right.
But it was really a lot like towards them of being like, y'all are putting yourself in a terrible position.
Yeah.
And so,
and again, maybe it's hubris, but like I wanted to win the best game possible. And that involved taking what I thought to be the best people and beating them. I think there are other combinations of people who I could have brought earlier, maybe via the double. But I was like, hey, like, why not try and do something cool?
Well, and to be fair, you would have beat them both.
Right.
To be fair, you would have beat them both. So it again, it's not really an indictment on you.
Sure.
You had set yourself up to be in the best position, and that's why we were all so high on your game.
And I think
as we watched it come down the stretch. But
yeah, and I think that the way we've been talking about how the jury left on you should have been kind of the warning signs to them. Whereas if the tables were turned, you also know that you're in that position where the jury's high on you. So it doesn't matter. I said this in my power rankings. It did not matter. You just needed to get to the end. It didn't matter who. Like, and that was a good and bad spot for you, which we'll obviously get to because you don't win the game. But anyway, so that's that. And for Justin watching and for even Gwen watching, like, take this all with a grain of salt. Justin, you won the game. So
they did that.
So
but I mean, I felt bad because I like sold Anthony. I like called him. I don't think I like called him names to other people. And that's like, I don't think I was like mean. I would hope I wasn't mean, but I definitely tried to weaponize everything I could.
There were times where I felt like Anthony was getting a real raw deal, like that. Almost at times felt a little mean, and that's
he just got outplayed. It really was what it was. Like he got outplayed so badly that it felt personal.
Yeah.
And it wasn't anything that y'all were doing. It was just like y'all just really outplayed him so bad.
And I think it was that stupid rogue vote that you guys were just so pompous about being right about, and you were all so ungodly wrong.
But I didn't need it to be right or wrong.
No,
I just needed
exactly. And you said
like
that.
I just needed it to happen.
Yeah, of course.
And just like I had the evidence to like blame it on him, and
of course. And Anthony, it was poor Anthony because he wasn't lying, but he was certainly acting like it.
That was funny. That was funny.
So then we have the kind of cut balancing fiasco. At least for Anthony, is a fiasco. Poor guy goes for almost an hour doing it like this. I was like, dude, I called him in the middle of it. I was like, I hate to tell you this, but you're doing it wrong. And Another little fun behind the scenes story for those of you watching, or if even Mitchell, you may not know this, but Dan wins that HOH. That was on a Wednesday. I know it was on a Wednesday because I was at church, and we were kind of resolving the whole thing right when I got to church that night, getting everything set up for youth group that night. And I was like, every once in a while, I make a house call to tell someone that they've won a power of veto, especially if it's like a big spot, or tell someone that they've survived a vote. So I called Dan to tell him. And I was trying to play it up. I hope I made you nervous for at least a second.
For a second, yeah.
Yeah, because I said something to the effect of I was like, sometimes I just like to make a call. This is usually how I do it. So if in the future, if you get this call, know that you've done something good's happening.
Oh, because I was like, he's weakening the blow. Like he's just gonna tell me that, like, sorry. And
yeah. So I was like, I sometimes make these calls as a friend, just so that you just to get it over with. So I was like, you have won the power of veto, and then I have you on speaker behind my church property, and I'm pretty sure no. you exclaimed, "Fuck yeah!" I was like, oh Dan, no, I'll speaker. I was far enough from any other person that no one would have heard it, but it was a funny moment.
Oh yeah, I ran through my house. I was so jazzed. I didn't feel like I needed it because you need everyone,
right?
But it also seemed like I was going to be safe if it kept the same.
I'm really curious. I would imagine I think you would have stayed, but I feel like the wheels were also turning in Gwen's mind, particularly at that round of when she thought maybe you needed to go. And there was an opportunity. I don't know about Justin, but I think for Gwen, potentially there was an opportunity at that round for her to wheels to turn. So
then you're left with a really tough decision on whether to use the power of veto on yourself. I had final six. And then Anthony's HOH just goes all the way down the tubes. A total nightmare for him. He knows it. Everyone knows it.
I scrolled up back through the jury chat and I was like, "Oh, they did him. They were not kind in there."
Yeah. For his HOH reign to end with the Mark and Macy nominations, and then who goes out there? Macy goes out there. Was there any real decision making here, and who goes home between Mark and Macy? Is it just? Well, actually, this was kind of a big one for you in a sense.
Yeah, this was tough because this was, I think, the first time that I had Gwen and Justin lie to me, because they were both like, "Yeah, we're all gonna save Macy, Smiley Strong, this and that," and then at the last moment they flipped on me, and I was like, "Oh, that means they have something pretty tight on the side." I could have gone either way. I think I again was just respecting the loyalty of Macy throughout the game, and she was a part of Smiley, created Smiley. Yeah. So I was like, we should protect her. And also, at the time, she was not a comp threat. So I was like, what is the true difference?
And poor Macy has this vote being pinned on her.
So, I was like, Anthony's pinning it on her.
Yeah.
How are you going to do that to Macy? She's so sweet. And so,
I will say one of your confessionals that you sent was the most comforting thing to me when you said, for what it's worth, I don't know if Macy or Anthony threw that vote. And I was like, okay, I'm not living in a crazy land. I was like, that made me feel a lot better.
Yeah. It was a 2-1. And hey, I got that jury, could have gotten that jury vote.
Well, and let's talk about one more thing that I meant to bring up earlier, and you can call yourself a hashtag game changer if you'd like, because when Lee goes out way back when, you sent him a goodbye message, which was, whatever. It was really inconsequential because he's not on the jury. And then Mitchell and I were like, hey, what if we did goodbye messages this season? So that's another layer that you now have. What was your approach in the goodbye messages?
Yeah. So I did the one with Lee because I felt kind of bad. Once I realized that he actually trusted me pretty implicitly, I was like, oh, I've done him royally bad. And I also was curious. I was like, oh, is this actually a good game move for me to put Lee out of this game? And so I was like, this is gonna be my postmortem. I was like, if you had played it in any other game with people you did not know, if I did not know Lee, I would have gladly worked with him very much longer, but I knew he was Lee,
Right.
And so that worked against him. Whereas I think some previous connections helped other people. so I like wanted to do that for him just to like validate his game. Not that he needed validation from me, but I was like, hey, at least to hear it from the person who did you the dirtiest. And then with everybody else, because I thought the goodbye messages were kind of standard. I just wanted to like let people know not only like the game that I was playing in general, but like the main reason how like the RBG connection, but then also my role in getting people out. Because I just like I've seen the jury questions, like people don't generally ask what they did to get you like out, but it's also like people want to know, like especially if they're being blindsided, like. And that was again why I wanted to differentiate. I felt like I could differentiate myself between Gwen and Justin if I was there at the end with them. It was like, yeah, we all have RBG and we've been running the game, but here's what I did to like make it happen. And so like I felt with Chandler and Chris in particular, everyone could have taken credit for it, but like I felt like I had unique credit there that I wanted to give myself. But I also didn't want to like over explain and make people feel bad. I've like I've seen a lot of the exit interviews, and I can appreciate like Davey saying like I was cold, like Mark and Davey said I was cold. I think I was just trying to make them quick. I didn't want to like take 15 minutes to tell you why you're out. Like you can deal with that on your own time. And, but such like you can learn from that. But I think I've heard that I had decent ones.
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say so for sure. I mean, and you know, obviously people were really low on Justin, so we'll talk to him about. But that obviously made yours look even better. So
yeah. So we're at the final six, well, final five, and the story becomes: is Dan going to be able to win his way to the end? At least from the outside. I don't know how you felt. What your story was.
In a sense, because there's also Justin and Glenn both in different parts of their last few days telling us that they're willing to take you to the end or wanting to take you to the end. So there's a little bit of that, but also we also kind of know, you know, when push comes to shove, Dan's got to win his way to the end.
What did you feel like your story was as we came down the stretch in the final five, final four zone? What were you thinking?
I generally felt like I played an untouchable game in that like not only like could no one beat me, but like literally other than Anthony, no one thought to utter my name. Like I was untouched. And so I mean I called my shot like every single time. I said like, hey, this is the one I want, and that like if I do this and then do that, like I will have a winning game no matter who I'm up against. I know Josh at one point asked like, who do you want to go up against? And I said, I don't care. Like I'll take anybody on and I think I'll win. And like because that's me. That's the game I want to play. Like that's the game like I admire is like you can beat anybody. At least feel confident that you can. And then like once I just like realized like what the competitions were, and I was like, oh, I can just if I win this one and win that one, and then I like realized that the comp record was attainable. I was like, let's get after it, and why not? Like
So finally,
I probably should have given up one of the comps though.
I don't think it changed, to be honest. I think at that point it did turn. I think people felt like you had played the game that you just articulated.
Yeah, I wonder if I don't know, maybe if I had given up HOH on that what the bleep that was like went to a tiebreaker between Justin and I. If I not to say threw it, but I don't know if Justin won, would he have taken me to the end? Like, was that the outpacing?
I heard you say a second ago that so you when I started, I think I may have dangled the comp record in front of you a little bit, and then did that make you just kind of want to go for it?
Oh, for sure. Like once that was out there, I very much admire Kieran's game. Clearly have studied BBH 9, so when that was like attainable, I was like, let's go get after it. But I was saying to Mitchell, like, did I need to win every one? And I was saying, should I have thrown the final final HOH, final four, which is what the bleep, to Justin, where we went to the tiebreaker, because is that where he realized that like I had outpaced him?
Little side anecdote. Jenny and I went on vacation with Eric and Kieran this weekend, and I told her that while you did beat her record, she ultimately won the game, and she appreciates having that distinction, at least at the very least. But yeah, so that could have been a spot, though. That's an interesting point, because that's when Justin does, I guess, maybe, I don't remember exactly, start talking about this, like outpacing himself a little bit. Is it one tiebreaker question that causes that? I don't know. I think that you still probably are going to gun for that veto at Final Four.
Yeah, so if I still won the veto, though, like then that would have been fine, but at least he has like credit of, I had a second HOH. So I don't know. Who knows? That's a question maybe for him.
Yeah. So in those 2 rounds, Final 5, Final 4, what is your ultimate goal? I mean, despite you saying you don't care who you get to the end with, are you like, all right, let's try and get to the end with RBG at this point? You have Anthony as this clear target next because of what he just did, but did any of that matter to you? Was it just about RBG?
Yeah, it was all RBG. I mean, I think Anthony was the clear comp threat. Like, I just could tell just the way he talked about the game that he knew BBH. That I was like, oh, he knows the game probably as well as I do, if not more. I definitely did not realize that he was connected to Sarah. So I was like, oh, that like makes a lot of sense. So, but I knew he was gonna be as competitive as I was. So I was like, he needs to go. And like, if we needed, like, if it came down to it somehow, and Mark was in the final 3, that would have been good for me. I think anyone could have been in the final 3 with me, and it would have been, if I don't know.
So is there? So in complete hindsight, is there any misstep here in not trying to take Justin or Gwen out, or do you not regret that?
No, I don't regret it. I don't regret this move. We'll talk about my lack of preparation for the final 3. I think that was the biggest mistake of my game. Just circumstance. But no, I did want to have like a iconic thing that was gonna be in BBH lore of like, hey, we took this final 3 all the way, and quote unquote greatest alliance of all time. Clearly, Mitchell, your point about there's one winner is well taken and well heard, and we'll see what happens if there's ever a Dan Alt reappearance.
Y'all executed the strategy of your alliance fantastically. I never once have said that y'all didn't do that. It's just at some point, my brain kicks in and says, well, what's best for me?
Yeah.
And at the end there, you got to do what's best for you. So, and you were fine. It wasn't, it's really not you. Like, what was best for you was sitting in the final 2 against literally anybody else.
Right.
So,
see, I don't think there was like much game to it, which was boring. But like that was,
there's intrigue. I mean, boring in Mitchell's opinion of that one element of it being boring of a march to the end. But in hindsight, and when I can look back on it, I appreciate it and enjoy it more. Maybe removed from it a little bit that it happened that way, and you guys were so strong and were able to do it like you did it.
Yeah. I mean, just the idea that like every day we went and like made a plan and like executed upon it, I would say nearly flawlessly. Yeah,
and you were a snowball rolling down the hill every day. With every call, you got bigger and stronger because you guys weren't all sold on it at the beginning. Why would you be? And the more you kept working together, the more that your ideas aligned, the more that your interests aligned, and your ultimate goals aligned. Like I said, you got bigger and stronger as you rolled down that hill towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
So we then get to the finale weekend, and just talk us through kind of everything.
Yeah, so we do the final 4, like Gwen casts the vote. We reveal RBG in a public manner to Mark. I was actually not a proponent of doing that, just because I think it's messy and no one wins. Like I guess we were all indicted, but like I was like, no one's getting a jury vote if Mark had his chance. But we did that, and then I was going to be going to Connecticut for a wedding, and then Vermont for vacation. And so as a result, I was trying to cram in the part 1 and part 2 at convenient times. The one thing I will say about anyone who ever thinks to do an endurance comp, clearly do what makes sense for your schedule. But I've ran like multiple marathons and like done many different physical activities. Your like peak performance is in the morning when you haven't used your legs and you haven't used your body. So like that was when I did I had practiced the cup thing the night before, did it a few times, realized my arms were gassed, and then the next day I ran it first thing in the morning and had a winning time. For this part 1, I did it at the end of the day, had a few beer. Like it just was not ideal conditions, but I was just trying to cram it in, not thinking that like it's going to take 10 minutes and I could just do it in the morning. So I like just whiffed it, which was just disappointing because that was the competition I could have won. And then the next day I was in Connecticut. I had been talking with Justin a bunch, and I was like, Justin, just letting you know from the get-go, like I'm bringing you if I win. I don't want an answer right now because I don't want you to like make any false promises. Right. But like just letting you know where I stand. And he responds saying like, yeah, like this is my plan all along. Like I'm going to take you to the very end and we're going to do this if he wins. Part 2 comes around. It's an hour before the finale, and I tried to study as much as I could, but I was just driving the entire day.
Okay.
And
did you suspect some kind of knowledge-based game?
I had expected stuff. I had been studying things like people's hometowns and like fun facts about them and other things. And I knew the comps, and I mean, Gwen, Justin, and I shared the same notes. I had a separate note for my own purposes, but like I knew when the comps were, who won, this and that. But I didn't study it. I couldn't study it as just because of circumstances as well as I could have or should have. So while I did get like blown out, like each one we did go pretty far.
Yeah. I was afraid that thing was going to go to a complete tie, like a complete deadlock.
Oh, I would have loved it. I had already had 2 up on him on the triangle, like the shape thing. But so so Justin wins, Gwen wins. They're going to be in part 3. I get the dreaded like, hey, are you around?
Right.
And I was like, yeah, sure. They called me and told me the news. I think. I mean, who knows? Who knows what would happen if I was able to convince them? I think I had the strongest rationale to save myself that I could have swayed them. Is that like if they both played super strategic games and social games, like prove that those games are better than a comp winning game, knowing that like yes, I also have a really strong social and strategic game, but trying to undersell that. And they didn't bite. Like, hey, I get it. Like, I'd been saying a long time that people needed to take me out, but they hadn't. And you got to do what you got to do.
How was this? How are you processing all of this in the moment? Because a lot is happening at once.
Like, I had always expected it. I had thought, given that Justin said that he would take me, that like, oh, maybe, but like, you got to respect the game move. We got to final 3. If I had, I don't know, like I was glad to have lost to them than other people in the game. Because hey, we played together. I never thought that they buttered me up well enough to like get my jury vote going into it though. That was, I think, a problem that I was like, oh, you guys aren't gonna like get my vote easily, either of you. So it was a bummer. I was disappointed because like, hey, I played really hard. I played a game that like every day I went to work and just like chipped away. and I wanted to play the best game. I wanted to play a winning game. I wanted to play hard. And you get so far, and just one vote does you in. So it was tough, but it wasn't for lack of trying.
Yeah,
and
I mean, that was. I wish that if you go back and watch the competition, which I don't know if you have, I don't know if you should, where you lost. Like right afterwards, Mitchell and I are still on air. I kind of forgot, and we're both like lamenting your loss, and we're really bummed about it because not that Justin was not a great winner, and we knew that Justin is a great winner, and I kind of come to that conclusion maybe sooner than Mitchell did in some regards because you in our minds you had run away with it. We thought that the way that you had just played from start to finish was like he deserves to win this game at this point. Like he really, really does. And so to watch you come to that, like lose at that finish line like that, because we knew like the second you lost, we're like, there's no way they're going to take him to the end. Like what? That would just be ridiculous at this point.
Yeah.
And the way and Gwen and Justin have been talking kind of all day, and they knew that kind of how this was going to go if one of them won. And so anyway, that like if you go back and watch, you'll see us both be like audibly and very visibly like upset that you had lost at that point. But I always say, and what I've learned about these games and these shows really is that there's often a lot more beauty in that spot that loses. Not that there's not great glory and beauty in the victor. Of course there is. That's what we look to. Like that's what we think about when we think about these seasons. Who won? But a lot of times you look at like those crushing defeats at the end. I think Kelly Wentworth. I think Paul and Big Brother. I think a lot of I think even Russell like way back when.
Don't say Paul. Don't say Paul and Big Brother. His loss was sweet. It was beautiful. It was not sad and lamenting. It was beautiful chef's kiss moment both times. Mwah, season 18. Mwah, season 19.
Yeah, that's your opinion. But anyway, so we can kind of cap all this in a second, but let's talk about two important things. Your decision to shave your mustache and your jury vote, obviously.
Yeah. So like again, my wife is like the best, but like for what like I mentioned this in my jury speech, like I try to do a lot of small things that would curry favor, and like one thing was growing a mustache because like generally like I'm a boring guy. Like I do certain things and they are fun to me and I enjoy them, but like I wouldn't say they are extraordinary, and that's okay. I am very pleased with my position and choices in life. But I was like, let me grow a mustache because like that would be fun. I
don't think I ever realized that you did that for this.
Yeah, like I like because I had it for like a couple weeks, and then I was like, oh, I can continue. Like I'm gonna play this game, and let me like keep it out and like make it a thing. So did that, and then like, but I told my wife, I was like, win or lose, I'm gonna shave it off. So when they voted me out, I was like when we were on the call, I was like, all right, you guys stop talking to me. Like I need to think of a funny thing to do when I get on camera. And so I was like, oh, let me go do this. And I like went out and like bought a bunch of shaving stuff in Vermont. So when they got on, I was just shaving because I was like, it'll be a funny little thing.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I know that like this season probably was not the most entertaining from like a just gameplay perspective because I can appreciate the steamrolling is interesting to certain people.
Y'all did a great job. I don't want you to think I don't think that. Y'all were amazing.
Mitchell, I'm talking from like in the game. I was like, this is like it's very beneficial to me. I'm enjoying it because I'm winning. But like it's not exciting necessarily. Like that's why I like also went probably as hard as I did at Anthony. I was like, this is going to be exciting. I was like, we need some excitement. So I was like, let me try and do something silly on finale night, even though I knew I was going to be like at the very end, but it was fun. And yeah, I was kind of up in the air going into my going at the start of the jury speeches. I was very incentivized to vote for Justin. I had been working with him since day zero. I felt like every part of the game was he and I were in lockstep. I gave him a lot of stuff for, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse. I gave him a lot of shit for voting me out, but again, I always like respect people who do vote me out, and like it was a strong game move. It was potentially a winning game move. So like I was like, I'm gonna go vote for him. The speeches were definitely putting me back and forth. I think Gwen made some really salient points, particularly around gender and just the differences in like adversity that individuals face. But I do think holistically, I thought Justin responded to questions better. And so that's kind of where my jury vote ended up going. But
yeah,
I mean, hey, they were both winning players. It's just how that shook out.
Yeah, I mean, and so then Justin wins the season, and then that's it, and that takes us to 2 weeks later where you can process it all. Was there any processing afterwards? Was there any like what was kind of next couple of days like removed from the game, or did you just completely remove yourself?
It was nice because I was in Vermont and I just like took a week off and like completely didn't. I was like, I don't need to respond to people. Like I don't need to like people because people were messaging, but I was like, I don't need to respond to you in a timely fashion. I don't need to tell you this and that. It was definitely weird to like talk to people and be like, Josh and Mitchell and everybody are not watching. I did get luckily like a lot of support after the game. People just saying that I played a strong game, and I definitely appreciated that. It was definitely tough because yeah, I mean we all played to win, and I wanted to. I very much wanted to win, but so did everybody.
Right.
So I've tried to figure out like what I could do better because again, the beginning of the game I was fueled by paranoia. I think the second part of the game I was pretty fueled by confidence. I think so. Like I was pretty thoughtful in the second half, but I just didn't know what I was. I thought I was left out in the beginning. That's why I wanted like that second HOH because I was like, oh, I need some sort of control. But I didn't feel like I ever knew what I was doing, and it luckily worked out.
Yeah, I think you knew more than you gave yourself credit for throughout the whole game, and you let your paranoia be your paranoia to keep you on alert. And then I wouldn't say fueled by confidence, maybe fueled by confidence, but also fueled by your path to the end and knowing what you had to do and being able to just kind of lay out your plan and try and make it happen, which for the most part did.
Mm-hmm.
So cap off your experience. What was the whole thing like for you? And tie a bow on this thing.
Yeah, happy to. I think this was a great first experience. I don't know if I would necessarily recommend it to someone as like their first, like coming out of nothing, like having never played like any kind of social strategy game. But I do think if you're familiar with Big Brother, familiar with like any kind of games, it's fantastically ran. Like everything from a production standpoint was top notch. The competitions were interesting, fresh, challenging. I think flexible, definitely to like people's life and circumstances. I know this was a older cast, and so I think that was really cool to see. I think there's definitely opportunity. Like I think you'll hear this in any probably org is like you get what you put into it, and I think if you're willing to put in the work, you can get a lot out of it. I know it was a lot of fun. It was challenging, maybe think in different ways. It's definitely tough. But yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Worked hard. Don't know if I'm ready for anyone too soon, but one day maybe.
No, you get to enjoy the other side where you get to watch other people do it, and you get to come comment with us and watch it and have fun on the side in some regard. So yeah, I mean we're super grateful to have you play. Like you were an instant yes when I saw your name come across. I was like, yeah, Dan. If Dan wants to play this game, he could absolutely play this game. So. And yeah, it was so much like it was an older cast, which was really fun, and it is. It's you get what you put in. That's anything, but definitely with this, and I think that with a cast that was older and they all were willing to put in the effort, that shows that anyone can do it. Anyone can do well in it. So, I think that's all I got. If you're watching, some people have watched with us, I think the whole way. So we appreciate you watching. If you're interested in playing in the future, we'll make that happen somewhat down the line. But we have some other fun things that we want to do through the off season, including some fun game nights and parties and whatever kind of stuff that we want to do to remind ourselves that there's good in this world. So, but if there's nothing else to say, I will sign us off from here. And yeah, good night, everyone.
Thanks for playing,
Thanks, guys.
Dan, don't go